While this is only the second morning of the practitioner's class, I suppose if we have a hard job to do, we might as well do it first. Then maybe we can have the rest of the week for a vacation. So let's get to the most difficult part of our work at once. And this is the most difficult. Those of you who are familiar with religious literature or mystical literature know that all spiritual living is based on the overcoming of the self, what Paul calls dying daily, being reborn of the Spirit. The religious literature of the world is in agreement that the only devil there is ourself. By ourself I mean my Joel self, your Bill self, your Mary self. That part of you or me which insists on being catered to, being considered. That part of us which can have hurt feelings or hurt bodies. That part of us which can have fears one day and joys another day. Now ordinarily in the metaphysical world you think that it's quite enough if you can get rid of the negative aspects of yourself. That is, if you can overcome your bad traits, overcome your sins, overcome your diseases, overcome your lacks, and of course hold on to all the good ones. Now that, in modern religion, is of course the object. You stop being a bad human and become a good one. You stop becoming a sick human and become a well one. You stop having bad temper and have a good temper. But that has no relationship at all to true religion, spiritual religion, or a spiritual way of life. In the spiritual way of life, you don't have any good qualities, any more than you have bad qualities. And if anyone accuses you of having good qualities, you say like the Master, "Why callest thou me good? There is only one good, the Father in heaven." And if they complain about the bad ones, you can always say with Paul, "Well, the good I would, I do not. It's the evil that I would not." And not because I'm bad, but because I find an evil power in me that's doing all the bad. So we can alibi our bad, but only on condition that we're willing to disown our good. We can't overcome, we cannot deny our evil qualities, but retain the good ones, because that would just make us good church members. Now, of course, in our lifetimes, church, and more especially the right sense of church, can be a great blessing to us. For instance, we here are in church right now. That is, we are assembled in a place for the purpose of communion with God, where two or more can be together as spiritual unfoldment takes place. You are in church when you are at the center. As long as you are there, not just to be seen of men, as long as you're there not just to do some praying, but if you are there to be two or more assembled in one place in order that the Spirit of God may permeate you and that the truth of God may reveal itself to you, if you assemble there seriously to hear the Word of God or speak it, then you are in church, and church serves its wonderful purpose. In our particular work, we do not have many centers like you have here. This one of Mrs. Holmes, and in Portland, the one of Mrs. Clow, are the only two centers in the entire world where the infinite way is given and where virtually the infinite way is the main or major activity and teaching. In other words, Mrs. Holmes always has had more of a spiritual impulse and message than she has had a book teaching. And so it fits in with the infinite way, because the infinite way is more of a revelation of the Spirit than it is of formulas and affirmations and denials. And so it is that Mrs. Holmes was one of the first and remains one of the only ones to so perceive the nature of the message of the infinite way as to give it full reign in that center, so that if it only occupies 10% of the center's time, it isn't her fault. It's because only 10% of the people want it that much. As far as Mrs. Holmes is concerned, you could have infinite way there 7 days a week and 7 hours a day. And so it is in Portland with Mrs. Clow. There has been a complete acceptance on the part of Mrs. Clow of this message, so that students who go there may go early in the morning or late in the evening, may have tape recordings or may have a lesson on the writings, anything they want. Now, all of that is a sense of church. In Cincinnati, where they have the largest truth center in the United States, under the leadership of Dr. Ingram, the man who was formerly with Unity and wrote that book, Silence, probably one of the only books on meditation there can be found, outside, of course, of our first, second, and third San Francisco lecture series, which is devoted primarily to meditation and treatment. And incidentally, those who do not have those or haven't studied them, please get busy with them. They are foundational. Now, at Dr. Ingram's, there is a room set aside for the infinite way. And they have tape recordings, and they have book studies, and the books on sale. Aside from these three centers, our work is not carried on in that way. Not because of a disapproval, because I approve heartily of meeting any place where you can unite in the interest of being one with God, of hearing the Word, reading the Word, speaking the Word. And so, in other cities, the work is carried on in a hotel room or in somebody's private home or some other little hall somewhere, and usually it consists only of the tape recordings, the books, and whatever the individual teacher or practitioner may be able to give their students. So you see, the concept of church as we have it is that any place that you can assemble and any time that you can assemble, two or more gathered for the one purpose of spiritual unfoldment, that is our concept of church. And so you here are fortunate that you have that large center and all those various rooms to carry on these activities. Now, as we come together and have as our purpose this uniting in the Spirit, we are not come to worship a far-off God, nor are we met to influence God in our behalf, but to bring ourselves into alignment with the God or spiritual laws that always have existed, that exist now, and forever will exist. And so you must accept the responsibility that is yours as an Infinite Way student, and realize that it is all up to you as individuals what degree of progress you make, what degree of unfoldment takes place. The time isn't up to you. Some of you, by your very natures, will achieve more quickly than others. But aside from time, the rest is, and the first part of it is the acceptance, and this is the difficult part, because I'm getting back now to the overcoming of self. That's our purpose here. No one can do that for you but you. Now, supposing I were to tell you that before we came into this room, it was a blank. There was no good in this room, and there was no evil in this room. This room was just a state of blankness. Couldn't benefit anybody and couldn't harm anybody. It was just nothingness. Now we come into this room, and what do we find here? We find love. We find cooperation. We find mutualness. We find some measure of joy, some measure of freedom. Above all things, we find integrity, friendship. How did it get here? It wasn't here before we came here. We brought it with us. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. The place whereon you stand is holy ground. And so, as we come together, we find no antagonism, no causes for lawsuits, no causes for wars, no causes for fights, no causes for protective work. Why? Because each one of us has come here in a spirit of love, in a spirit of truth, in a spirit of sharing, in a spirit of receiving from the Father. Not from each other, from the Father. No one came into this room with the idea that they were going to benefit by somebody else's being in the room. Each one came knowing that whatever benefit was to be derived had to be derived from the Father. The Father within me? Yes, but the Father within you. The Father within me wouldn't have been enough. There must be the recognition of the Father within you. Now, in that spirit, you see, we come together in love and harmony, peace and joy. On the other hand, we could have brought into this room antagonisms, selfishness, self-interest, the desire to get, to benefit, to achieve. And then what would have happened to the atmosphere in this room? It would not be the atmosphere that you are feeling now. There would have been a stir, there would have been restlessness, there would have been a looking around. And so you have a graphic example of the fact that you yourself are responsible for the attitude that is in this room. You can't give God the credit for it. You just can't do it. The only thing you can give credit to it is the fact that you came into this room in a spirit of love and in a spirit of open-mindedness to God and to nothing else. That's what set the atmosphere in this room. You see, God has always existed in this room or outside of this room. But God's presence in this room couldn't have avoided a fight if we had come in fighting mood. God's presence fills this universe, but you can't stop fights in the South Seas, in Russia, Indochina. God is there, but there aren't the individuals there who are meeting together for only one purpose, God realization. You can go out on the street here and get a fight as fast as you want it. Why? Because all are not in agreement that the kingdom of God is within and that we can turn to the Father within for our needs, and so we do not need each other. So you see, the responsibility for your life is upon you. The responsibility for your harmony is upon you. Don't go looking around for God. God is, and God is omnipresent, and God's law is here. The responsibility rests upon you and upon me to come into harmony with God's law, and God's law is love. Love is the fulfilling of the law. And that doesn't mean emotion, and it doesn't mean sentiment, and it doesn't mean personal sense or sensuality. Love means the recognition of God as individual being. You are only loving your neighbor as yourself when you are agreeing that God is the individuality, the life, mind, soul, and spirit of individual being. First of all, that means your being. So then you are self-sufficient. When you use that term self-sufficient, always put a capital S on self. You are self-sufficiency, meaning You find your sufficiency in yourself, and self means God. So you find your sufficiency in yourself, within your own being, within the God being of you. And you do not look outside to me, or to him, or to her, or to it. You find your sufficiency within yourself, within your God being. Now, in doing that, you set me free, and you set each other free, because now you have no responsibility for my demonstration. You have no responsibility for your neighbor's demonstration. Nobody in this room concerns you one bit. Nobody. Each one will make their demonstration or fail in it according to their own light, not according to yours. You are responsible only for your demonstration. Now, the dying to personal self comes in when you leave this room and realize that that's the truth about your family. That you have got to realize that they are self-sufficient, whether or not they know it, and stop trying to make their demonstration. Assist, yes. Cooperate, yes. We're doing that in this room. Just by being here, we're helping each other. I'm helping you. Each one of you is helping me. This message couldn't come through the way it is except that you are drawing it through. If I was sitting here alone in this room, either no message would come through or some entirely different message would come through. If a different group of students were here, it might be an entirely different type of message. You are drawing this message as a fulfillment, because you have come here not to me. You've come that God may reveal itself, and I'm merely an instrument through which God is meeting your need. And so we are all fulfilling a part for each other. Every time you ask a question, remember, you have had a question answered for 6, 8, 9, 10 other people in the room who wanted to ask the same question but didn't think of it, or it didn't formulate itself correctly in their thought, or it hadn't come to their conscious remembrance. But how many times questions are asked and answered, and then people say, oh, that was answered just for me. Now, in that same way as we go out of here, we cooperate with our families, with our neighbors, with our communities, with our nation, and finally with our international brothers and sisters. But we do not cooperate in the sense of making their demonstration or being responsible for it. Our first way of cooperating is to realize that God is individual being, and therefore each one is self-sufficient, self-governed, self-maintained, self-sustained. That is, governed, maintained, and sustained by their inner selfhood. And you see how that clarifies the Master's teaching. I have meat the world knows not of. If you asked me, I could give you waters that spring into everlasting life. I have all that within me, so have you. Now you commence to realize that for yourself, then you commence to realize that that is a universal truth, and one by one our friends wake up to their self-sufficiency. Now, it is true that there are two forms of love. I'm still speaking of spiritual love. But spiritual love takes two forms, or has two aspects. And the first of that, and the most important, is loving thy neighbor as thyself through this realization of self-sufficiency, through this realization that God is individual being, through the realization that God is the soul, the mind, the spirit, the law under all being, so that not only you look around this room and realize that for each of us, but as you go out into the street and behold mortality in different phases, from infancy to old age, from health to death, and from saints to sinners, you love your neighbor in that same way, through the realization of, thank you, Father, at least I know God is individual being. God is the being of this individual. God is the life, mind, soul. That is the highest form of loving your neighbor as yourself. And it requires no mental or physical interference in another's life, or even mental or physical help in another's life, unless it's sought. The second form of spiritual love is found in the 25th chapter of Matthew. When I was in prison, he visited me. When I was sick, he comforted me. When I was naked, he clothed me. When I was hungry, he fed me. Oh, Master, when did we do anything like that for you? Inasmuch as ye did it unto the least one of these brethren, ye really did it unto me. And so it is that in our experience, without trying to make parasites of anybody, without trying to live their lives for them, we still have opportunities to heal the sick, raise the dead, preach the gospel, here and there supply someone with food or clothing or housing, or temporary forms of human good, not by undertaking to live their lives for them, dominate them, control them, not by undertaking to put them on our payroll forever, but by those spiritual graces that informs us of some temporary need. We have the grace to share it, offer it, give it, and then go on about our business without any sense that we did it, because in reality we didn't. It was God's grace that meets all sufficiency. There is only one way to overcome the self, the Joel self, Bill, Mary self. And that is never to accept your errors as if they were yours. Remember, they are impersonal error victimizing you today or tomorrow, but from which you will eventually come out. And by recognizing that no quality of good is yours. So even if you do know the truth for somebody, or even if you do bring out a healing for someone, or even if you do meet their rent for them, don't ever feel that it was you, and don't get any warm feeling about yourself, because that would be fatal to the death of the self and the rebirth of the new self. Whatever good is performed through us is an activity of God, of which we are just the instrument, or for which we are just the instrument. Whatever of evil we do is a temporary falling under the spell of world hypnotism, world mesmerism, the one evil it is called, Satan. Now, it is at this point that we come to the most difficult part of overcoming the self. There is one prerogative we would all like to retain, and that is our opinions. We all have the conviction that we're entitled to our opinions. And that, of course, is the last stand of the devil's self, because we are not entitled to any opinions. We are not permitted to judge. Now, one half of that isn't too difficult. As students, you've already come to the place where it is not too difficult to withhold judgments of evil. The ordinary human, that's very difficult. They love to look out and well, at least they can know the truth about McCarthy and how evil he is, or somebody else that strikes them in that sense, or pick out the evil in you or me to judge. But the student has already come to the place where he's willing to say, no, it's not up to me to condemn, it's not up to me to judge, so I'm withholding all judgment about this. But now we're at that point where the other half comes in. We can't even judge of good. We can't even look at a healthy person and say they're healthy. We can't even look at a person we know to be a good person and say they're good. We cannot judge. We cannot have an opinion. We cannot even be satisfied with good in the human picture. So that we come to a place that determines what degree of healing work we're ever able to do. If you think for a moment that you will be happy to see a sick person get well, or a poor person get affluent, or a bad person get good, you might as well give up your hopes right now of attaining any great degree of progress in your spiritual ministry, because that has nothing to do with a spiritual ministry. A spiritual ministry says you are spiritual. That is, the actuality, reality of your being is spirit. It is neither good nor bad. It is neither healthy nor unhealthy. It is neither sinful nor pure. The truth of your being is God. God is the reality of your being, and you dare not have any other judgment than that. And so when the patient says the fever is 104.5, you cannot come to the conclusion that it's evil and therefore you must get busy right away and do something about it. But when they phone and say it's down to 101, you can't breathe a sigh of relief and say, isn't that fine? There is the death of the selfhood, when you can have no reaction to good humanhood or bad humanhood. There is the ultimate death of personal selfhood, when you no longer react to the human good or the human evil. There is the difficult part of this work. There is the difficult part of the spiritual path. Judge not, that ye be not judged. You see, doctor may come along and examine you and tell you you're 100% healthy. And you must be careful of that judgment because of what might happen tomorrow. You might rest in that judgment and really believe him. We have seen it over and over again where people passed insurance examinations and died before the premium was due. So you see, had they rested back in that judgment, oh, look how healthy I am, I just passed for life insurance. Well, maybe they did rest back in it and feel content and at peace. And it just didn't happen that way. Or it may be that a person looked at their list of investments or properties and thought, well, I guess I'm pretty well situated, and leaned back in that. And then the bottom drops out of the market, or the neighborhood changes and the property goes down in value, or something else happens in the human scale, and all of a sudden they're thrown and say, but everything was all right, everything was so wonderful, everything was so perfect. Yes, they were judging by appearances. Do you see that? One day we had peace in the world, the next day we had war in the world. One day it was the good old days of peace and 12 cents a dozen eggs, and the next day was the horrible days of so forth. Now, if you take undue censure of the evil and undue pleasure or reliance on the good, in either case, sooner or later you'll come to trouble. But if you keep constantly before your vision the two words infinite, invisible, then you will judge righteous judgment, because you will never consider whether I am good or bad, or whether I am rich or poor, or whether I am sick or well, but you will say, what about the infinite invisible? Oh, well, that's all right. Well, if that's all right, then it's all right, because that's the substance, law, cause of all that is visible. And if your faith, reliance, and hope is in the condition of the infinite invisible, you will find the infinite invisible visibly appearing. Now, when you look out at person, place, or condition, and call it good or evil, you are judging by appearances, and those appearances are subject to change. But if you look through the appearance to the infinite invisible and say, what is the nature of the infinite invisible? Oh, the infinite invisible is spirit. Oh, well, then that ends it. You don't have to come back out into the human picture. The human picture will change. I suppose it might be very much like a Buddhist who has been accustomed to thinking in terms of Buddha and then becomes a Christian and all of a sudden has to think in terms of Jesus Christ. He's got to change all of the facial expressions and racial expressions and so forth and so on. I have that on my library shelf. I have a beautiful little book of verse and drawings, and it is the entire story of the Christ from conception to ascension, all in Chinese, and all of the characters are Chinese. Mary is Chinese, and Joseph is Chinese, and the infant is Chinese, and all the way through these drawings they are all Chinese. And I suppose that that's perfectly natural to a person thinking in terms of the Spirit of God made flesh. If he's Chinese, he could only see him made visible as Chinese flesh. Now, those are concepts, do you see? Concepts of the Christ made evident according to our interpretation or light. If you were going to judge of the Christ by that book, you would always be looking for it with slant eyes. So if you're going to look for what the human world calls health, very soon you're going to find old age if you keep looking at that same direction, and there won't be any health there. If you keep your vision inwardly, and don't look at the infant and say, isn't it wonderful it has these 60, 70, 80, 90 years ahead of it. Don't look at the person of 60, 70, or 80 and say, isn't it too bad they only have 10 or 20 more ahead of them. But if you look to the center of their being and realize the nature of the invisible, you can be bringing to yourself, and sometimes to them, immortality. Because immortality is never achieved in the outer. Immortality is achieved within you. The moment you can catch the glimpse of God as the only being, you have attained immortality. If you expect me to attain it or you to attain it, you will only accomplish a little longevity. But when you see that God is my life and yours, then you have seen that life is immortal. And again, you've died to selfhood. You've died to that aspect of selfhood called age, running down, weakness, failure of faculties. Never, never by trying to treat you or me for health or age or wealth, but by recognizing the infinite invisible as the only age of man, or the only health of man, or the only wealth of man, or the only capacities of man. Mental capacities, artistic capacities, physical capacities. You see, the body itself has no capacity. The body is an instrument. But it's either an instrument for your belief or for your knowledge. You can make it an instrument of belief by asking how old it is, how much it weighs, what its degree of health is. In that way you make it an instrument of belief, and the body then shows forth and reflects every belief in the world. On the other hand, you can make it an instrument of knowledge by saying God is its strength, God is its age, God is the measure of its capacity. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. Didn't say a word about muscles or bones. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. It could better be said, I can do all things through Christ which is my only strength. I can live forever through Christ which is my only life. I can bring forth wisdom, art, music, literature, any kind, through Christ which is my spiritual capacity or my artistic capacity. If I think I have one of my own stored up in the brain, I limit it. If I believe that my only capacities are in proportion to my education and experience, I limit it. But when I say the invisible Christ is my capacity, the invisible Christ is my eternality, the invisible Christ is my strength, The invisible Christ is my being. The invisible Christ is the measure of my manhood, womanhood. You see, now we have placed the entire life of our being in our Christhood, or in our invisible selfhood. When you do that for yourself, it's good. And when you begin to understand that for your neighbor, that's loving your neighbor as yourself. You are acknowledging the same selfhood for your neighbor as for yourself. And this works miracles with people who are in any way backward, subnormal, abnormal, over whom we have charge or responsibility, like students, children in the family, other members of the family, where we're not responsible for their conduct, we're responsible for our concept of them. The moment we loose them and let them go as humans and begin to say, I don't care whether you're good or bad, I don't care whether you're sinful or pure, I don't care whether you're rich or poor, I don't care whether you're sick or well, I'm relying on your Christhood. In that moment you have killed off the self of you, which feels a personal responsibility, or which feels a sense of sorrow one day and a sense of joy the next day. You have killed that off the moment you no longer have a personal reaction of sorrow toward the subnormal and a reaction of good to the supernormal. The moment you've stopped that and said, I disregard both of those, I live in the realization of your spiritual selfhood, of your spiritual Christhood, and it is perfect, it is intact, it is complete. And abide in that, rather than take a human being and change them by raising them up or lowering them down. You will find what it means to live the mystical life, the spiritual life, the life that is consciously one with God. I am only consciously one with God when I am realizing that God is my being. And I'm only living consciously one with God when I realize that God is individual being. Therefore, I may not look at a person, a place, a circumstance, or a condition and have any other opinion than looking through it and beholding spirit. I may not call anything or anyone good or bad. Now the difficulty is that when someone calls up for help, instinctively you know that the condition is evil and you want to do something about making it good. Whether it's declaring a truth or meditating or getting in touch with the Spirit or whatever it is, your first reaction is, here is a condition of evil, now let's, even if you don't consciously think it, that's what's going on back in your thought. You're accepting an evil condition, and there is where you have to start dying daily, because you can't react that way. You can't have any opinion. You can't call it good and you can't call it evil, and even when they say they feel better, you can't call it good. You're still standing on the fact of unchanging spirit, God that never changes. Now, I said to begin with, this lesson is the most difficult of all, because if we could learn this one, there wouldn't be need for any others, because we will be thoroughly dead when we no longer react to appearances. We will be thoroughly dead in our personal selfhood and thoroughly alive in our conscious union with God when we do not judge. Now you see, the very fact of human nature compels us to put labels on people, things, and conditions. That is the entire story of Adam. Adam put labels on everything. And he called some things good and some things evil, and some white and some black and some hard and some soft. Adam, that is the Adamic nature of us, puts these labels on appearances. So you are in the Adamic nature as long as you are putting a label, a judgment, on person, place, thing, circumstance, and condition. It is very much like the days when we had the Gibson girl. I know most of you are too young to know about those things, but in my early days we did have the Gibson girl, and she was really beautiful. She was our standard of beauty. But what a terrible thing it was to travel in the Orient and find they didn't have any Gibson girls. And so to our sense they didn't have any beauties. Ah, yes. You learn quickly in travel to change your concepts of beauty and understand that the Gibson girl was only the standard of beauty, let us say, of big cities. As soon as you got out on the farms in the country, the Gibson girl didn't hold up anymore. When you got into the Oriental countries, they didn't hold up anymore, or the Yugoslavian or Middle European. All this changed, different concepts. But nevertheless, we were labeling the Gibson girl as the beauty. And so it is that we label certain foods as good. It's a difficult thing to believe that there are people who don't enjoy ice cream sodas, because that comes close to being our concept of the ultra. Now, Adam gives these names and labels. And that means not a man who lived in some period of history. That means the Adamic nature of us. The old man Adam in us is what insists on putting labels and saying this is good, this is bad, this is well, this is sick, this is rich, and this is poor. As we overcome our Adamic natures, in proportion as we overcome the Adamic nature of our being, we no longer sit in judgment. We look through the individual and become more and more aware of their Christhood, until the day comes when you can actually commune with people and never have any sense of their humanhood at all. You can actually commune with animals and have no sense of their humanhood at all. And you can carry it further in the higher reaches of mysticism, when you are on the spiritual heights. You are completely at one with nature. Those who are familiar with Jacob Boehme, the old German Kabbalah mystic, will remember his 3 experiences in which he becomes so at one with nature that there was no place where he left off and the trees began. It was all a oneness of life. And those of you who have read, I don't know if it was the July letter, will recall I had the similar experience in which I was myself, never lost my identity, but I was also out in the waves, and I was the waves. And I was the trees, and I was the leaves on the trees, and I was the birds singing up there, and there was no place. It was as if I were here and saying, this hand is as much me as my feet is me. It's all part of me. It's all a united oneness. And I'm not up here and feet something separate and apart out here. This is all one. Well, the extension went right on out into the water, into the trees, into the birds, and into the fish. And there was no place where they weren't a part of me and I wasn't a part of them. At the same moment that I was looking down from the sky to the earth, I was looking up from the earth into the sky, just as I'm looking out and seeing both hands and feet, and at the same time aware of my face and head. Now, in absolute consciousness, there is no loss of identity. I remain myself and you remain you, and yet there's no place where one begins and the other leaves off, one ends and the other begins. It is a oneness. All of this by degrees. Now, it is this way that in the first stages, and everyone who has ever brought out a healing through spiritual means has had this experience, otherwise they couldn't have brought out the healing. They may not have been conscious of it sometimes, but this is what happens. When you are working for anyone, and you come to any period of stillness and then get a quickening, a deep breath, an impulse, a release, what is actually happening is you are becoming aware of their spiritual identity, and you're knowing that all is well. You are then in communion with their true selfhood, and that is why you can drop the responsibility for their humanhood. You've touched their reality and found that it's well. Now, in time, that grows upon you so that you not only touch the reality of your patient or member of your family in doing your healing work, but later on you begin to become aware of it at other times through the day or evening, and then later life is a complete communion. It's a communion in God and a communion with God, but with each other. And so you are not sitting like this in a room just full of people, but you're feeling behind the appearance, you're feeling that flow of love or interest or truth or communion. You're feeling something that isn't human. You're not interested in their malehood or femalehood or age or looks or appearances. There's a something, an invisible, and I might say intangible to human sense, something, a flow that's just going back and forth that has nothing to do with humanhood. That is recognition of true identity. That is communion with true identity. That is the real relationship. That is the relationship that should more exist in marriage. When a couple finds something in each other deeper, far, far deeper than external appearances, then the marriage can be said to have been made in heaven. Then we can say, what God hath joined together, no man can put asunder. Because if you ever come in contact with the individual with whom you have something in common behind the physical, beyond the mental even, beyond not only physical relationship, but beyond even a common interest in music or art or literature or religion, even something deeper than that, then you have touched what is called the mystical marriage. Now that's a relationship that is well understood in relationship to Christ. When a person has made their communion with the Christ, it is called the mystical marriage or oneness. You find that explained, revealed in the Song of Solomon. That is when the relation has gone beyond physical and mental into a union with the Christ. The only thing is that because of the language of love, most of these experiences have been translated, like the Song of Solomon, into a language that would seem to make it fit in with human love. Of course, it's nothing like human love. And yet all mystical language seems to bring it down to a comparison with or using the illustration of human love. But that is only because no other language has been found to explain the union that does take place between an individual and his individual Christhood, or one individual and another on the spiritual path, in which there is nothing of sex, nothing of sensuality, nothing of desire. And if on rare occasions such things do break through, it is only because of the hypnotism of human sense that occasionally will bring an individual down from the higher level to the lower, and usually it'll only be momentary, because the person really on the spiritual path does not come down into the human very often, and if they do fall down once in a while, they quickly climb up and seldom come back to it. And so you see that that is accountable for the fact that in all spiritual healing work, you find very often a strong attachment between patients and practitioners, or students and teachers, and that attachment is basically a spiritual one. Sometimes because of an inability to express it spiritually, it comes down to the human level on one plane or another, and that explains why teachers always have apples on their desk. Their spiritual relationship, it seems necessary to express in some human form, and that is a necessary thing until the communion with the Christ rises above that, and then after that there isn't any more need for any expression on the earthly level at all. Not even a saying, I appreciate you, or I appreciate your teaching. Even that is beyond, because it's in essence. It is like the relationship between a dog and his master, where there's love. The dog never has to tell the master he loves him. The master has a way of knowing that, I guess, without the dog speaking. And so have we. We have a way of knowing each other's reactions to each other, each other's feelings for each other, without any outward expression. But that only comes with the death of the self, the overcoming of the self, when there's no I that has to express itself, no I that has to say, I'm grateful, no I that has to say, well, aren't you grateful? When that I is gone, then the relationship is so purely spiritual that everything is known and understood without any visible expression. Now, the importance of that is this, that it compels us, as we face the world, not to judge. Judge not, good or evil. Don't have an opinion. And then you'll find how hard it is really to die, when you can't have an opinion. Now, your first difficulty is going to arise. See, I'm speaking a great deal today about difficulties. I'm in the mood the master must have been when he said, I didn't come to bring peace, I came to bring a sword. And that's the way I feel this morning. I'm not a bit tender, kind, or merciful. I got a great big sword in my hand. And I'd like to cut off all the heads in the room, so that we'll have no selfhoods here. Now, as you go to your rooms or your homes, the most natural thing in the world is that somebody is going to come into your thought that you have been helping or that you have wanted helped. Someone that is your particular problem. And you're going to have to sit down and say, wait a minute, I will have to reorganize myself in this direction. If I'm not to judge and say this is an evil person or an evil condition or an evil experience, now I'm in a really tight fix, because how am I going to help them? How am I going to help them if I'm not allowed to acknowledge that they need help? And that's where the dying begins, because right there you're going to have to rise to some place where you say, all right, I cannot agree that you need help. I cannot any longer feel that I must help you, or that help must come to you from some direction, even from God. I can't have an opinion as to whether or not. Maybe you do need help, but I can't have the opinion. I cannot judge. Now where am I? Now how am I going to express my love or help when I've had taken from me the prerogative of agreeing that you need help, or a feeling that you need help, or even accepting the fact that you want help, that you've asked for help? What am I to do about it within myself? First, let me tell you that outwardly you continue, if they're asking for help, to say, I will give it to you. Don't change that relationship, because they do not understand where we are in consciousness. But inside now, what am I to do? Since the responsibility is mine, what am I to do? I cannot give you help. I cannot agree that you need help. I cannot feel that you need help. Yes, I know. I'm looking right at you, so I can see the appearance of sin, disease, lack, limitation, or death. I can see that. What am I to do with that? Well, right here, the infinite way gives you a help. It says that what you're looking at is not a condition or a person, it's an appearance, or it's a temptation, or it's a suggestion, or it's a claim. In other words, it's a mental image and thought, but it's not an externalized condition. It's like the water on the road on the desert. Here's the water right on the road up there ahead of us. We can't deny it, because there it is, we see it. But if we stop the car for a minute and close our eyes and remember the infinite way, we will say, is it water on the road up there? I can't have an opinion. I can't have any judgment. I can't decide whether it is or it isn't. All I can do is say it is. Something is. Something is there, but I'm not allowed to judge what it is, good or evil, right or wrong. Now, if it's an appearance, then it's not an externalized condition. If it's a suggestion within my thought. So it's not an externalized condition or person or substance. Well, then I don't have to do anything about it out there on the road. I only have to do something about it inside my own being, and that something that I have to do within me is to know that God made all that was made and it's good. And that ends it. Now, here we are dealing with an evil person or an evil condition or an evil disease. And the first thing we do is retire within ourselves. I can't call it evil any more than I can call it good. I wouldn't dare call it good, but I certainly can't call it evil. So if it's neither good nor evil, what is it? I don't know. It just is. That's all I can know about it. It is. I can't know that it's good. I can't know that it's evil. I can only know that it is. What am I looking at? What am I seeing? Am I seeing what is, or am I seeing an appearance? The minute I can agree that I'm seeing an appearance, then I can disregard it, because behind that appearance is that which is. Just like I could look out here and see you, and judging by appearances I could say good or bad, rich or poor, sick or well, young or old. I can do all that. I can do all that judging by appearances. And I may not be right. I may not be right. And so I will close my eyes to the appearance and say, yes, that is the appearance.